by Mr. Sharat Sharma, co-founder of Spirit Foundation. Let's give a huge round of applause and welcome Mr. Sharat Sharma onto the dais. And he would be addressing our audience on the topic Digital Healthcare Technologies Shaping the Economy.
The couple of things that are, we heard what the innovation or the incubation landscape is like, but there's a big change coming in the idea landscape as well. And I like to kind of introduce some of these ideas that are in the pipeline, they're around the corner, you can probably recognize them and use them in your startups as you go along. And then I'll tie it up with digital health and also some of the policy and infrastructure changes that are underway. First, let me start by a very simple story just to illustrate what I'm talking about. Every year we have about 25 million babies that are born, and they need to be vaccinated. So we have a vaccination program that covers, that has about 30 to 40,000 vaccination centers, and is to vaccinate the 25 million babies that are being born. And we do a pretty good job as a country. We are able to cover 23 million, sometimes 22 million every year. Now, this is what had been happening till COVID came about. Now, you know this, I don't need to tell you, there are weeks where we vaccinate 25 million people. There have been some days we vaccinate 25 million people. So the question to ask is, how is it that we have the same 30, 40,000 vaccination centers? You've not added new vaccination centers. How is it that you can get a productivity gain of 50x to 200x through the same system? And the reason is that it actually thinks of the problem differently. It thinks of the problem because it reimagines how people will flow through the system, how information will flow through the system, and how money will flow through the system. So there is a revamping of this that is taking place, and I want you to pay attention to this because this will be significant in unleashing productivity in pockets that we don't appreciate today. Now, one of these areas where you will see this happen in a very big way is money. And some of you may have noticed that back on August 2nd, there was a very big announcement of something called e-Rupee. E-Rupee is a value-added service over UPI. I can imagine probably, is there anybody here in the room who does not use a UPI? Okay, so I don't see any hand going up. Now, it's a value-added service on UPI. What it will do is allow many of the health programs to be pivoted from the money, instead of being given to the supply side, to be given on the demand side. So what this means is that a baby is born undernourished, is then offered under the Poshan Abhiyan a set of services, protein biscuits for the mother and things like that. Instead of that being delivered on the supply side, what they will receive is actually a voucher, a person and purpose specific voucher that will allow them to pull this stuff from the market. Now, we are talking about various estimates that in about 3 years' time, at least 50% of 60,000 crores will be moving from a supply side model to a voucher demand side model. So pay attention to this. This will be important because this will open up opportunities in a way that are very difficult to envisage right now. This is an idea that I wanted to share with you about how money flowing through the system will reorder the financial system. But this is an opportunity since we're talking about technology, I can tell you a little bit about UPI because it gives me a side idea that I want to introduce to you. Supposing, imagine for a moment that I have 100 rupees that I have to send to Dr. Ambuj. Pre-UPI, what I would have done was I would have gone to Paytm, I would have debited my wallet by 100 rupees, credited his wallet by 100 rupees, he would have received a notification and the payment would be done. And both of us would have interacted only with one party. That party is Paytm, right? Today, let's say I have to do the same thing. I'll go to something like PhonePe. PhonePe needs a sponsor bank from 5th March last year. That sponsor bank is no longer Yes Bank, but ICICI Bank. So it needs a sponsor bank. The system has to talk to my debiting bank account. Let's say that's SBI. It has to talk to Dr. Ambuj's bank account. Let us say it's with HDFC Bank. We are already up to 4 parties. and the fifth party is NPCI. So the conventional belief when UPI was launched in 2016, not only in India but in many parts of the world, was that a five-party system cannot outperform a single-party system in three things: in experience, in reliability, and in security. Because there are five vulnerable points, right? You can hack into any one of the five. In the case of Paytm, you have to only hack into one. So, but you know from experience, since none of you raised your hand that you are not using UPI, you know that this is not true. A five-party system did outperform a single-party system. Does anybody here have an iPhone? Does anybody here have an I see some of you raising your hands. You know, Apple is built on the idea that a single-party system will outperform a multi-party system, right? So, but that's not always true. So what is happening in India is that these multi-party systems are beginning to outperform single-party systems. But for that to happen, you need very clear protocols that will dictate how these five parties talk to each other in 100 milliseconds so that they can give you a better experience than a single-party system. Those protocols, in fact, UPI is nothing but that protocol. These protocols of multi-party systems are also coming to health. And I want to talk to you about two of these because they'll be very, very important to you in the near future. So first, before I do that, I want to tell you why is it important to build a multi-party system versus a single-party system. The reason to build a multi-party system is that it reduces the barrier of entry for new incumbents to come in. So in the case of UPI, you can be just a phone pay or, or a Bharat Pay or a simple startup and become part of the payment system, which would have been impossible otherwise. Second is, in a country like India, if you want scale to happen, you have to take your solutions to places where it would never go on its own. In a single party system, Paytm had to raise another $10 billion to sell the idea of using that to everybody else. Here in the case of UPI, every bank, every application service provider is selling that idea to new users. And therefore, UPI, even after 5 years, is continuing to grow 8% month on month, right? Which is why I've been making statements. 2 years ago, I made a statement. By the way, you should know UPI is originally the protocol is designed by iSpirit and gifted to the government. So I'm intimately involved and naturally a proud person about the UPI protocol. But and it's part of India Stack. It's the third layer of India Stack. And so I made a statement 2 years ago and I got flack on Economic Times front page when I made a statement saying UPI will overtake China in digital payments, which you know has now happened. I have subsequently made a statement that in 2 years from now, we will do more UPI payments in India than MasterCard will do worldwide. And, we know that will happen because MasterCard payments are growing 8% a year. We are growing 8% a month. The two curves have to intersect some point in time. But the point I'm making is that these multi-party protocols are exceptionally important. And they're coming to you in two areas where you should pay attention. First area which came up in the previous two discussions, it was brought up by Dr. Ambuj as well, is data. And it is very important to realize that India is at the cutting edge of how to share data from one place to another. This was first brought to life in the financial space. And if you really want to understand how it works, go and understand something called the account aggregator. And the place to understand the account aggregator is by going to a place called sahamati.org.in. It was launched officially to consumers on 2nd of September this year. It is available. You can actually try it out with 300 million bank accounts, and it is growing at 28% week on week. And this is the system that is also coming to the health space as something called the personal health records. And it will go to every sector because it's actually a sector agnostic protocol called DEPA, Data Empowerment and Protection Architecture. And the enabling law for this is the Personal Data Protection Bill, which has been already presented in the Parliament. It's with the JPC. JPC's promised to push it back into the Parliament later this year, perhaps as soon as the winter session. But certainly this year or next year, we'll get the law in place and it will be applicable very broadly. So what is UPI to payment? DEPA is to data. right? And you must pay attention to this, because this will completely reorder how you think of data and health data, because the data will be completely in the control of the patient, of the individual. You will carry your data with you, and you'll be able to give electronic consent to be either able to share it with a doctor in a clinical setting, or with medical researchers, or many other use cases that are there as you go forward. The second area where multi-party protocols are going to become very important is something, if you've been following, has been recently announced as UHI, which is Unified Health Interface. And this is a multi-party system for digital consultations to come to life in the country. There has been a public consultation period that has now been over, and sometime in April of next year, you will see wave one players, which include companies like Eka Care, Briefcase, Medon, Bajaj Health and others, beginning to bring this to life in the hands of the patients. And so these are some of these changes that are taking place purely from a health stack perspective. Now, health stack is a 20-year project. A part of it is being brought to life by the government, and it used to be till recently called the National Digital Health Stack. It's been now on August 2nd renamed as Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission, and part of it is going to be brought to life by the private sector, and all the private sector players have come together under a new body called Swasth Alliance to make that happen. So, so these are some changes you should pay attention to as you go forward. Why do I say that? Because although all of you are now using UPI, I'll tell you the story, and this is the limitation that we have in our entrepreneurial system. So back in time, UPI, does anybody remember when UPI came to life? When was UPI launched? Does anybody remember? Which year? August 2016, right? So just before UPI was to come to life in 2016, we in iSpirit went to 5 companies in Koramangala. You know, Koramangala is a locality in Bangalore. Some people call it, you know, I have some people kind of smiling at me, but it's, you can think of it as Palo Alto of the Bangalore innovation system. So went to 5 companies, 5 payment companies. One of them is Chiller. Will you use UPI? They said no. They don't exist anymore. Second, InstaMojo. Will you use UPI? They said no. They are basically a shell company, not doing particularly well. Third one, Razorpay, also a Koramangala company. Will you use UPI? Yes, we will. Unfortunately, they had raised money from MasterCard. So MasterCard said, no, slow down. This is going to compete with us. And unfortunately, entrepreneurs were very young and they listened to MasterCard. They eventually woke up. It took them a year to do that. But MasterCard is only half in. You know, Razorpay is only half in, not fully in. The other 2 companies went full in. And you probably know of one of them, which is PhonePe. You probably don't know of the other one, which is called JustPay. JustPay carries 40% of the UPI transactions in the country today. They're a B2B player, that's why you haven't heard of it. So even in Koramangala, out of the 5 companies that could have adopted a multi-party protocol, only 2.5 did. On the other hand, across the world, Facebook, which had never been in payment, saw the power of this and adopted it. Google, which had never thought of entering payments in India, saw the power of it and adopted it. Because this is the problem that we have with Indian entrepreneurship. We have not experienced this before. What is Google? Google is SMTP, a 1982 protocol. They have a public protocol, multi-party protocol. They built on top of it Gmail and they make money. They have GPS, you know, a public good available to everybody. They built on top of it and they do maps. If you have HTTP, many of you know what that is, a multi-party protocol to see web pages, and they build search on top of it. So if you think of it from Google's point, is whenever a multi-party protocol becomes available, they think about how to build on top of it and make money. Now, this is not the concept that our Indian entrepreneurs have. So you don't get country scale when you are doing something here in India. And this is what I'm trying to evangelize to you, is that India finally is building protocols that the rest of the world is interested in. as part of the health stack effort. Please embrace this. If you miss it out, you will not get population scale systems as you go forward. Now, having now laid the foundation here, and I want to be on time, so I will move very quickly, is I want to explain what is driving this. So there is a conceptual model of how healthcare should change in India over the next 20 years that is driving a lot of this public work on technology, public digital infrastructure as it's called, protocols or platforms. That conceptual model, if you are okay, I will quickly share with you. Now, the conceptual model is how to have healthy Indians, citizens of India to be healthy. Now, if we had $2,000 to spend or $3,000 per capita to spend, we know from the European experience, we could have a healthy population. Because at $2,000 per capita, we know from many country experiences that you can have a healthy population. We obviously can't do that because our per capita income is $2,000. So we can't obviously spend all of it on healthcare. So then the option is, can we do it at a lesser amount? Then we know we can do it at $700. How do we know that? Because there's a country not very far from us, Thailand, which is able to do a very good job of that. And some Indian states, Kerala being one of them, which are becoming closer in being able to spend up that kind of money, although the gap between what Kerala is able to do with its money is a lot inferior to what Thailand is able to do with its money, right? But if we could spend something in the range of $500 to $700 per person per year, we could possibly aim for a system that would deliver, but we can't. We won't be in that position for the next 10 years. So we have to find a way to be able to do that at about $200 to $230 if we have to pull this off. And therefore, we have to reimagine how this will happen. That reimagination requires three ideas to come to life. One idea that it requires coming to life is preventive care. Because the best way to be able to keep somebody healthy is to have healthy citizens, is to keep them healthy. And therefore preventive care matters a lot. This is going to be a very big idea in the future because we are one of those societies where preventive healthcare is culturally appropriate. It is a culturally accepted idea. Yoga, Ayurveda, and so many things. We have to find a way to basically incent people to modify their behavior, to do it at population scale so that we can actually have preventive healthcare of a kind that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. The second is we have to find a way to do early detection. We know from many countries examples, notably Japan. Many people say, why do Japanese have so much less cancer? You know, because is it to do with their food? Yes, a little bit of it is to do with their lifestyle and food. But the majority reason, more than, you know, if you do a multi-factor kind of attribution, most of it is to do with early detection. And can India take the lead in early detection? Can we democratize early detection in India in a way that a regular Indian, a daily wage laborer can get early detection better than an American can in America? And the answer to that is yes. And so that's going to be a focus area over the next 10 years. We will see a lot of work happening in that area as we go forward. Again, it will be the same model. There will be public infrastructure, private innovation. The third area, of course, is remedial care. We got to figure that out in a big way. Now, in remedial care, there are many things that have to be sorted out. First, we don't have consistent protocols. COVID was an example of that. In some cases, the run on some drugs and run on, some kind of treatment paradigms was misplaced because there wasn't a consistent protocol. We actually do a very poor job of that. In fact, the current recommended protocol on AIIMS for COVID is wrong. So we've not focused on having an efficient protocol system that we can give to our doctors and empower our doctors as we go forward. So this is something that needs to change. The second area is that when you come to something that Dr. Ambuj talked about is how do we do diagnosis? All diagnosis 10 years from now is going to be what? Not symptom based, because even COVID you can't identify by symptom, will be biomarker based. And can India actually drive this shift from symptom based diagnosis to biomarker-based diagnosis. And then again, I'm here to tell you that this is a shift that will be coming as we go forward. The third area that is going to be very important is, which is also manifested here, is that we got to, in at least communicable diseases, we got to regulate the way we use our antibiotics. And for chronic diseases, we got to have better chronic care than is possible right now. And this is the area where you will see digital consultations come in. They will not be the e-commerce paradigm, because the doctor-patient relationship is not meant to be an e-commerce transaction. This is not meant to be buying like an iPhone, right, or a phone from somebody. It is going to be a different paradigm altogether, and it will first come to life with doctors' existing patients, which are usually 80% of the caseload that they have, rather than the new patients that are there. And that is where UHI will be playing a very important role as we go forward. So, so there are many changes that are coming. They'll come in waves as we go forward. These are waves that have happened in financial inclusion. This is not me saying it. Many people across the world say that when it comes to fintech, India has become one of the capitals of the world. And it has become the capital of the world because this innovation model that I'm describing to you is public goods, private innovation, is what was first applied as India Stack to the financial world. And the same idea is now being applied in health. So it will come in waves, and just the way it came in the finance world in wave. The first wave was everybody gets a bank account. Second wave is everybody gets payment. The third wave, which is actually rolling out, some of you who are following this, is about MSME financing. It's called SAHE, an Open protocol, if you OCEN, Open Credit Enablement Network. So these, and that's beginning to roll out. If you search for it, you will find many articles in the press related to that. So it will come in waves. Health will also come in waves. And one of the first waves that's going to come is going to be about your personal health records. And then subsequent waves are going to be about digital consultation. The third wave is going to be about diagnosis. So there is lots cooking here, and this is a wonderful time to be a healthcare innovator. And I wish you great success. And you know, here you have the village that has come together in a way that doesn't happen in many locations. And I'm a vested party because I'm also associated with IKP. So I have many of my friends here as a board member of IKP, and I'm really, shooting for this situation where Hyderabad and Telangana becomes the hub for the next generation innovation that we will see in the health space. So with that, I finished, 2-3 minutes before time. So if you have if there is time, I can take maybe one question, or I can skip that and we can do that offline, whichever that you like. So I think I have permission. I know running an event is really hard. So we just want to take one question. The gentleman at the back, please go ahead.
Sure. Thank you for the inspiring talk, sir. I'm repeating the question that I was hoping to get a specific answer for.
And wishing you all the best as you go forward. Thank you so much.
Mr. Sharat Sharma for a wonderful talk. With this, may I now invite on stage Dr. Ranga Reddy Budi, President, IFCAI, to please present a memento to Mr. Sharat Sharma, co-founder, Spirit Foundation. A huge round of applause from everyone.